Most people think Family Guy is just a dumb cartoon that tells 100 jokes a minute and forgets them by morning. That idea is about to fall apart in your hands. Because somewhere in this show is a clip that seemed to call a real bombing weeks before it happened. A joke about a famous actor that the writers later admitted was built on a secret they had already heard. A baby with a confirmed hidden truth the creator wrote an entire episode about, then buried on purpose. A town some fans swear is the afterlife. Water that might be poisoning everyone in it. And a quiet question underneath all of it that has nothing to do with cartoons and everything to do with how your own mind handles a world that refuses to explain itself. 10 cases. Every fact check, every source real. By the end, you will never watch this show the same way again. Welcome to Red Umbrella. Let's begin. The episode that got taken down in the middle of March 2013, a new episode of Family Guy aired on a quiet Sunday night, the same way new episodes had been airing for more than 10 years by that point. It was called Turban Cowboy. Most people who watched it laughed in a couple of spots, forgot about it by Monday morning, and went on with their week. Nothing about that night felt special. The episode arrived and faded the way hundreds of episodes had faded before it. By the middle of April, that same forgotten half hour had become one of the most argued about pieces of television in the entire country. And almost none of the people doing the arguing had actually watched the whole thing. To understand how a throwaway episode turned into a national rumor, it helps to picture how Family Guy is built. The show follows the Griffin family in their made-up town, and it tells a main story in every episode. But every minute or two, the show stops the main story cold and jumps to a quick random joke that has nothing to do with anything. The joke plays for a few seconds, sometimes only 2 or 3, and then the show snaps right back to where it was. These little side trips are called cutaway gags, and Family Guy uses dozens of them in a single episode. They are the show's signature move. A normal half hour can fire off 100 small jokes, and a huge number of them have no connection to the plot at all. They are just there, fast and weird and gone. The episode itself was about Peter Griffin, the cartoon dad, having a skydiving accident and ending up in the hospital. There he meets a man named Mahmoud, and they become friends. Without really paying attention to what is going on around him, Peter slowly gets pulled into a group of people who turn out to be planning an attack. That is the spine of the story. It is a dark plot dressed up as a comedy, which is the kind of thing the show does often. Sitting somewhere inside that episode was one of those tiny cutaway jokes. In it, Peter wins the Boston Marathon, and the way he wins is by driving his car straight through the crowd of runners, knocking them all down so he can cross the finish line first. The joke is short. It is mean in the cartoon way the show is always mean. Then it is over, and the episode moves on as if it never happened. Separately, in another part of the episode, tied to the main story about the attack, there is a moment involving explosives being set off with a phone. The two scenes are not near each other. One is a quick gag, the other belongs to the actual plot. Anyone watching the episode straight through would experience them as two completely different beats, minutes apart, with nothing linking them. Then came April 15, 2013. On that day, 2 homemade bombs went off near the finish line of the real Boston Marathon, only seconds apart. 3 people were killed, hundreds more were hurt, many of them very badly. It was one of the worst attacks on American soil in years, and it happened in front of cameras, in a crowd, at an event that was supposed to be a celebration. The whole country watched the footage over and over. The 2 men responsible were brothers, and during the days that followed, as police chased them, it was reported that the younger brother drove over the older one with a car while they were trying to escape, which played a part in the older brother's death. A marathon, a car running people down, bombs going off, a phone setting off an explosion. The real event, terrible and confusing and fresh, lined up in pieces with things that had appeared in a cartoon only weeks earlier. Within hours of the bombing, the internet was already searching for meaning, the way people do when something senseless happens and the mind refuses to accept that it was just random. Somebody found the Turban Cowboy episode, and then somebody did the thing that turned a coincidence into a phenomenon. Someone took the short marathon cutaway, where Peter mows down the runners, and stitched it together with the separate scene of explosives being set off by phone. They cut out everything in between. They placed the 2 unrelated moments side by side, one right after the other, and made a single short clip out of them. In that edited version, it looked like Family Guy had calmly acted out the entire Boston bombing, step by step, weeks before it happened. Car into the marathon, phone, explosion, all in a row, all in one breath. That clip spread faster than almost anything the show had ever produced on purpose. People shared it as proof. Not proof of a joke gone wrong, but proof of something hidden and planned. The loudest voices pushing it were the ones already convinced that nothing in the world happens by accident. Alex Jones and others who traffic in that kind of thinking grabbed the clip and used it to support an idea they call a false flag, which is the belief that the government secretly staged the attack itself and left little clues buried in television shows and movies ahead of time. To them, a cartoon seeming to know about the bombing first was not strange. It was evidence. It fit the story they already wanted to tell, and so they passed it around as if it settled everything. For a few days, the clip was everywhere, and the show could not exactly explain itself in real time. The damage of a thing like that is done long before any correction catches up. Seth MacFarlane, who created Family Guy and voices Peter and several other characters, finally spoke up on Twitter. He called the edited clip abhorrent. He said plainly that the event was a crime and a tragedy, and that his thoughts were with the victims. He did not try to be funny about it. There was nothing funny in any direction. Fox, the network that airs the show, made its own move. It pulled the Turban Cowboy episode from its website and from Hulu, so people could not stream it anymore. The network also said the episode would not be shown again in reruns. For a show that had survived being canceled twice, and had built an entire reputation on never backing down from anything, quietly removing an episode was a heavy decision. The episode was treated like something that needed to be set aside, at least for a while, out of basic respect. The strange part, the part that gets lost in every retelling, is that the clip that scared everyone was never something the show actually made. No writer sat down and arranged those events in that order. No animator drew the bombing. What existed in the real episode was a dumb little car joke in one place and a plot point in another place, separated by minutes and connected by nothing. The version that went viral was assembled by a stranger with editing software, weeks after the fact, with the real tragedy already in everyone's mind to fill in the blanks. The order, the meaning, the feeling that it was all one smooth prediction, every bit of that was added later by someone else. This is the place where the math matters more than the magic. Across 11 seasons, Family Guy had thrown out something close to 10,000 of those random cutaway jokes. Cars, bombs, cities, disasters, famous places, sports. When a show fires that many disconnected darts at the wall for that many years, the odds are not that one of them will eventually look like a real event. The odds are that several will. A cartoon that makes 100 jokes an episode about everything under the sun is going to land on something true by pure accident, again and again, simply because it never stops swinging. The surprise would be if it never happened. What the panic really showed had little to do with the writers and a lot to do with how people watch and how people grieve. After a frightening event, the human brain goes looking for a reason, a pattern, a sign that someone somewhere saw it coming, because a planned horror is somehow easier to sit with than a meaningless one. A cartoon that seemed to know felt like a crack of light in something dark. It suggested order where there was only chaos. That need is powerful, and it does not care whether the clip is real. The clip only had to feel real for a few days, and it did. After Turban Cowboy, something shifted in the way people treated the show. Every time something big and awful or strange happened in the news after that, viewers went digging back through old Family Guy episodes, frame by frame, hunting for the moment the show had supposedly called it first. The idea took hold that the cartoon was some kind of fortune teller, hiding warnings in plain sight. Compilation videos appeared, lists were made, the phrase that the show predicted things became a small industry of its own, and that reputation, the whole notion that Family Guy somehow knows the future, was born right here, out of a clip that was never real, attached to a tragedy the show had nothing to do with. The legend started with a lie of editing. Everything that came after, every later case of people swearing the show saw something coming, grew out of the trust that this first viral clip created and then betrayed. So the foundation of the entire Family Guy prophecy myth turns out to be hollow at the bottom. The most famous example, the one people reach for first, was stitched together by a stranger and aimed at the worst possible target. It tells far more about fear and the internet than it tells about any secret knowledge inside a writer's room. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously, which makes the next case all the more uncomfortable. Because once in the show's long history, the writers really did put a name on screen years before the rest of the world was ready to say it out loud, and when they were finally asked about it, they admitted they had heard something. That one was not stitched together by a stranger. That one came straight from the people who make the show, and it points at a man whose secret was hiding in plain sight the whole time. Section 2, the joke that knew too much. Go back to 2005. Family Guy was still a few years away from the giant it would become. It had already been canceled once, brought back by strong DVD sales, and was busy proving it deserved to stay on the air. The writers were doing what they always did, packing each episode with as many fast jokes as they could fit, swinging at famous people, swinging at the news, swinging at anything that might land. Most of those swings were forgotten the moment they aired. One of them was not. In an episode from that period, there is a quick scene where baby Stewie ends up somewhere he should not be, and the show plays it for a laugh the way it plays everything for a laugh. Stewie comes running through a crowded store with no clothes on, clearly upset, yelling for help. What he yells is that he has just escaped from Kevin Spacey's basement. That is the whole joke. A few seconds long. A famous actor's name, a dark little suggestion folded inside a cartoon scream, and then the show moves on to the next thing without looking back. At the time, the name in that joke belonged to one of the most respected men in Hollywood. Kevin Spacey had 2 Academy Awards. He was the kind of actor other actors studied. He carried huge films and serious dramas, and his face was the face of prestige. So a cartoon baby screaming about his basement read in 2005 as the show simply being its usual self, grabbing a big name and saying something wild about him for shock value. Nobody watching thought it meant anything. It was filed away with the thousands of other quick shots the show takes at celebrities, no heavier than any of them. The joke sat quietly for 12 years. Then in the fall of 2017, the world changed the way it looked at a lot of powerful men all at once. A wave of people began coming forward to describe abuse and misconduct they had kept silent about for years, sometimes for decades. The first major name in that wave was a movie producer, and after him, him, the floodgates opened. One after another, men who had seemed untouchable were named by the people they had hurt. Kevin Spacey became one of those names. An actor named Anthony Rapp came forward and described an encounter with Spacey from 1986, back when Rapp was only 14 years old. Spacey responded in a way that drew even more anger, and soon more people stepped forward with their own accusations. Within a short time, the prestige collapsed. The respected man was gone, replaced by someone the industry wanted nothing to do with. He was dropped from projects, written out of a show he had starred in, and pushed to the edges of the business that had once celebrated him. And almost the instant his name appeared in those headlines, somebody remembered the cartoon. The clip resurfaced fast. Eagle-eyed fans pulled up that 12-year-old scene of naked baby Stewie running through the store, screaming about escaping from Kevin Spacey's basement. And the joke that had meant nothing in 2005 suddenly looked like it meant everything. Here was a children's cartoon-shaped show, more than a decade earlier, putting Spacey's name next to the exact kind of horror he was now being accused of. People watched it again, with their stomachs turning. The timing, the specifics, the way the joke pointed straight at the truth that was only now coming out. All of it felt impossible to write off as random. This is where the Spacey case splits away from the Boston Marathon case, and where it becomes genuinely strange. The Boston clip was fake. Somebody stitched it together. The Spacey clip needed no editing at all. It was one real, unbroken scene, exactly as it aired in 2005, with no trickery involved. There was nothing to expose, nothing assembled by a stranger after the fact. The joke really existed, really named the man, and really aired a dozen years before the public found out. So the obvious question landed with real weight. How did the show know? For once, the people who actually made the episode answered that question out loud. In early 2018, with the clip everywhere again, Seth MacFarlane was asked about it directly at an event where the press talks to television creators. His answer did something most viral mysteries never get. It pulled back the curtain. MacFarlane said he did not remember exactly who pitched the joke. What he did remember was the moment it came up in the writer's room. He said that the idea was based on a rumor, and here is the important part, it was a rumor he himself had not heard. Other writers in the room had heard it, and he said the rumor actually had to be explained to him before he understood why the joke worked. Sit with what that means. The joke was not a guess. It was not a coincidence. It was not the show throwing darts and getting lucky. The joke landed because there was already talk inside the entertainment world about Kevin Spacey. Quiet talk. The kind that moves through industries long before it ever reaches the public. The writers had heard that talk. They built a joke on top of it, and they were comfortable enough that the audience would not catch the meaning that they put it right on screen, hidden in plain sight, protected by the fact that nobody outside that world knew what it was pointing at. One of the show's producers, Alex Sulkin, added more to the picture. He said he was in the room when the joke was pitched. He could not remember exactly where it started either, but he offered a possible thread. He pointed to something from around that time involving Spacey and an odd incident in a London park, a story that had raised eyebrows and gotten people whispering. The way Sulkin described it, when rumors like that are already floating around, and the show's standards people have heard the same whispers everyone else has, they will sometimes let a joke like that through. The joke gets approved not because it is harmless, but because enough people already half know what it means. So the secret behind the Spacey prediction is almost more unsettling than a real prediction would have been. The show did not see the future. The show repeated a present that most of the public had simply not been let in on yet. The information existed. It was traveling through Hollywood. It just had not reached the rest of us. A cartoon, of all things, became a place where that hidden knowledge slipped out into the open, disguised as a stupid joke, sitting there for 12 years until the world finally caught up to what the writers had already been told. MacFarlane himself was careful not to let the moment turn the show into something it was not. Even as people praised Family Guy for seeming to know, he pushed back on the whole idea. He said the notion that the show is some kind of all-knowing fortune teller was sensationalized, and he compared the myth to people treating the cartoon like a thing that can magically read the future. He clearly did not want credit for powers the show never had. The honest version, the one he kept pointing at, was simpler and darker. The writers had heard a rumor. They made a joke. The rumor turned out to be true. That is the whole trick. This case matters for a reason that goes past one actor and one scene. It quietly redraws the map of every Family Guy prediction story. People treat all of these moments the same way, as if the show has some mysterious site, as if a single magic explanation covers all of them. The Spacey case proves that the explanations are not all the same. They sit on totally different ground. One famous example was a fake clip built by a stranger. Another, this one, was a real joke built on real whispers the writers admitted they had heard. Same show, same kind of viral panic, completely different machinery underneath. It helps to understand just how buried this man's secret had been, and for how long. Before the fall of 2017, the talk about Kevin Spacey lived entirely in the shadows of the entertainment world. It moved in private, passed quietly between people who worked in film and theater. The kind of open secret that everyone in a certain circle seems to know, and no one says out loud where it counts. The public had no access to any of it. To anyone outside that world, Spacey was simply a brilliant actor, admired and untouchable. The gap between what insiders whispered and what the public believed was enormous, and it had stayed that way for years. There had also been smaller, stranger signals over time, the kind that raised eyebrows without ever turning into a story. Around the middle of the 2000s, there was an odd incident in a London park involving Spacey. A late-night encounter he first reported to police and then quickly walked back, changing his account in a way that made people wonder what had really happened. Nothing came of it publicly. But moments like that fed the quiet talk, kept the rumors warm, and gave the people already whispering even more reason to whisper. That is the world the joke was born into. A world where a great deal was suspected and almost nothing was provable, where the truth was common knowledge in private and unthinkable in public. The writers were not reaching into the future when they wrote that gag. They were standing inside that shadowy circle of talk, hearing what so many others had heard, and quietly carrying a piece of it out into the open. It also says something uncomfortable about how secrets work among powerful people. The Spacey talk had been moving through the industry since at least the mid-2000s, long enough and widely enough that a comedy writing staff could casually build a gag around it. That means a lot of people knew something, or suspected something, for a very long time before anything was done, before any of the people he hurt were believed in public. The cartoon did not hide the truth. The cartoon was one of the few places the truth leaked out years early, and almost nobody noticed because it was wearing the costume of a joke. There is a strange kind of honesty in that. A respectable newspaper in 2005 could not print what those writers put in a cartoon, because a newspaper needs proof, and a comedy show only needs a rumor and a laugh. The very thing that makes Family Guy seem unserious, its willingness to say anything for a quick joke, is what let it carry a true and ugly secret out into the daylight a full 12 years ahead of the reckoning. The show was reckless, and being reckless, in this one case, made it accidentally truthful. So two of the most famous Family Guy predictions turn out to have nothing in common, except the panic they caused. One was a lie of editing, one was a leak of a rumor. Neither was magic. Both got treated like magic by an audience hungry to believe the show could see what nobody else could. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The third case people always bring up does not fit either pattern. There was no fake clip to expose, and there were no dark whispers in a writer's room. Instead, there was a baby in a high chair, a talking dog, and a single sentence about an Olympic champion that the show tossed out as a joke about something that, at the time, sounded completely absurd. 6 years later, that absurd little sentence stopped being a joke at all. Section 3. The Beautiful Dutch Woman. In 2009, an Olympic gold medalist named Bruce Jenner was, to most of the world, a settled story. The face was famous in a fixed way, the way old champions become famous, locked into one image and left there. Jenner had won the decathlon at the 1976 Olympics, set a world record doing it, and become a national hero almost overnight. That was decades earlier. By 2009, the medals were ancient history to younger viewers, and the bigger fame came from being part of a reality television family, the kind of family whose every argument and birthday and breakup played out on camera. Jenner was the calm, older figure in the background of all that noise, the step-parent, the former athlete, a name people knew without thinking very hard about it. Nothing about that public picture suggested anything was waiting underneath it. To the audience watching at home, Bruce Jenner was a closed book with a known ending. That is what makes what the cartoon did with that name so odd to look back on. In a Family Guy episode that aired in May of 2009, there is a small scene between two of the show's most popular characters. Stewie, the baby, and Brian, the family dog who talks and thinks like an adult, are having one of their back-and-forth conversations, the kind the show uses constantly because the two of them play off each other so well. The subject of Jenner comes up. The talk turns to the idea of Jenner having given birth to one of the children in the famous family. Brian, playing the voice of plain common sense, states the obvious thing that everyone in 2009 would have agreed with. He says that Bruce Jenner is a man. It is the safe statement. It is the thing no reasonable person would have argued with at the time. Stewie disagrees. And the way the show writes his disagreement is the part that would haunt the clip later. Stewie tells Brian that this is only what the press would have you believe. He says Jenner is not a man at all. Then he delivers the line that became the whole reason anyone remembers the scene. He says Bruce Jenner is a woman, an elegant, beautiful Dutch woman. In 2009, that line was built to be ridiculous. The joke is not that Stewie is correct. The joke is that Stewie is the kind of character who says strange, confident, completely unhinged things, and this was meant to sound like one more of them. A baby insisting that a famous male Olympian was secretly an elegant woman from the Netherlands was supposed to be funny precisely because it was so far out of step with reality as everyone understood it. The line is stacked with nonsense on purpose. Elegant, beautiful, Dutch. Each word piling more absurdity onto the last, until the whole thing collapses into the kind of statement only Stewie would make with a straight face. The audience laughed because it was wrong. Then 2015 arrived, and one piece of that joke stopped being wrong. In the spring of 2015, after years of quiet and rumor and one carefully done television interview, the person the world had known as Bruce Jenner came out publicly as a transgender woman. The full reveal came on the cover of a major magazine, with a new name, Caitlyn, and a new public life. It was one of the biggest cultural moments of that year. It was on every front page, every news show, every feed. The settled story everyone thought they knew turned out not to be settled at all. The closed book opened, and in the days right after, somebody remembered the cartoon. Of course they did. By 2015, 2015, the show already had its reputation as a supposed fortune teller, built up over the years from earlier viral clips. So the moment a major public figure revealed something surprising, the internet went straight to the Family Guy archives. The 2009 Stewie scene came back to the surface almost immediately. There it was again, a baby in a cartoon 6 years earlier, looking at Bruce Jenner and flatly declaring, against all common sense, that this was a woman. The line that had been written as a punchline now read like a quiet announcement made years too early. The clip spread the way all of these clips spread. People shared it as proof of the show's strange power. Here was another one. Another case where Family Guy had said the unsayable thing long before the rest of the world was ready to hear it. The Jenner scene joined the growing list, sitting next to the others as evidence that the writers somehow knew. This case needs to be handled carefully, because it sits in a different place than the two before it, and the differences are what make it interesting. Start with what is actually true in the comparison. The core of the cartoon line and the real reveal do line up on one point. Stewie said Jenner was a woman. Jenner later came out as a woman. That part is real. The clip is real. No one edited it together the way the Boston clip was edited. The scene aired exactly as people later saw it, in May of 2009, untouched. So the basic claim that the show said this 6 years early holds up. The scene exists, the date is real, and the central word matches. Now look at where it falls apart, because this is where the prophecy idea starts to wobble. The fact-checking world looked at this scene closely, and the careful verdict was that it counts as a prediction only if you stretch the meaning of the word prediction almost to breaking. The reason is buried in the joke itself. Stewie did not just say Jenner was a woman. He said Jenner was an elegant, beautiful Dutch woman. Dutch, from the Netherlands. That part never came true and was never going to come true, because nationality does not work that way, and was never part of any real story about Jenner. The line was a cluster of random, funny details, and only one of those details happened to brush against something real years later. The rest of it was pure Stewie nonsense. Exactly as intended. That single detail changes how the whole thing should be read. A real prediction is specific, and it holds together. This was a joke that threw several wild ideas into one sentence, and by chance, one of those ideas pointed in a direction that reality eventually moved toward. The elegant part, the beautiful part, the Dutch part, those were the writers being silly. The woman part was the writers being silly too. It only stopped looking silly because the world changed around it. There is also a strong case that the writers were not reaching into the future at all. They may have been picking up on something already drifting through the culture. By 2009, there had been talk, gossip, speculation about Jenner for a long time, the kind of low background chatter that surrounds famous people for years. Family Guy lives on exactly that kind of chatter. The show feeds on what people are already half saying about celebrities, then pushes it to an absurd extreme for a laugh. Seen that way, the Jenner joke looks less like a glimpse of tomorrow, and more like the show doing its usual trick, taking a faint rumor that was floating around and blowing it up into something ridiculous. The same basic machinery as the Spacey joke, just aimed at a different person and built on much thinner material. It helps to know that Family Guy was not even alone in this. Around the same era, other comedy shows made jokes that played on the same gossip about Jenner. A well-known late-night sketch comedy show made a reference to it too. When several different writers' rooms are all nibbling at the same rumor, that is a strong sign the rumor was already out there in the open air, available to anyone paying attention to celebrity talk. It was not secret knowledge locked inside one cartoon. It was a thing enough people were murmuring about that multiple comedy shows reached for it independently. That detail quietly drains the magic out of the moment. A genuine vision of the future would not show up in 3 different places at once. Shared gossip would. Seth MacFarlane was eventually asked about this clip too, the same way he was asked about Spacey, and he again steered away from the idea that the show could see the future. He treated it the way he treated the others, as the show doing what the show does, not as proof of any special sight. He had no interest in letting people turn a joke into a miracle. So why does this scene stick in people's minds so strongly, even though the prediction barely holds up under a close look? The answer says more about how memory works than about how the show works. The human brain is very good at remembering the part of a sentence that turned out to be right, and quietly forgetting the parts that turned out to be wrong. Everyone remembers that Stewie said Jenner was a woman. Almost nobody remembers the elegant, beautiful Dutch part, even though those words were right there in the same breath. The brain trims the joke down to its one accurate piece and throws the rest away, and then the trimmed down version feels like a clean, stunning hit. The misses get deleted. The one near hit gets saved and replayed. That is how a messy joke becomes a legend. This is the same trick at work behind almost every prediction story attached to the show. A program that makes 100 jokes an episode, year after year, about every famous person and every topic on Earth, is going to produce thousands and thousands of specific statements over its lifetime. Most of them will be wrong, and those get forgotten the second they air. A few of them, by the simple weight of numbers, will eventually line up with something real. Those get pulled out, dusted off, and presented as proof. The forgetting is the secret ingredient. Nobody makes a viral clip out of the 10,000 jokes that never came true. They only make clips out of the handful that did, which makes the show look far more accurate than it has any right to look. The Jenner case shows that pattern in its clearest form, because the proof and the disproof are sitting inside the very same sentence. The hit and the miss share one breath of dialogue. You can point at the word woman and call it a prediction, and in the same instant you can point at the word Dutch and watch the prediction fall apart. Both are true. Both are in the line. The whole mystery and the whole answer live side by side in one joke, which almost never happens this neatly. And there is something worth sitting with in how the world treated the clip when it came back around. In 2009, the line was an insult dressed as comedy, a thing said to get a cheap laugh at a famous person's expense. By 2015, the exact same words were being shared by some people as if the show had been quietly respectful and ahead of its time, like it had known and understood something tender before the rest of the culture did. The words never changed, only the world around them changed. A line written to mock became, 6 years later, a line people pointed to as insight. That shift did not happen because the cartoon was wise. It happened because reality moved underneath a fixed set of words and gave them a meaning the writers never put there. 3 cases in, a clear shape is forming. One prediction was a fake clip. One was a rumor the writers admitted to hearing. One was a joke with a single accidental hit buried in a pile of nonsense, kept alive by the way memory throws away the misses. None of them required the show to actually see the future. Each one had a plain, human explanation underneath the spooky surface, and each explanation was different from the others, which means the prophecy reputation is really 3 unrelated things wearing the same mask. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously, but not every eerie Family Guy moment is about the show seeming to know a secret or call a future event. Some of them are about timing so cruel and so exact that no rumor and no editing could ever explain it. There is one episode that aired on an ordinary night in another country, on a network thousands of miles from where the show is made, and the minute it ended, a piece of real news broke that turned the whole thing it had just shown into something almost too painful to rewatch. No one planned it. No one could have. And that is exactly what makes it the hardest one to shake. Section 4. The night the clock lined up. The 3 cases before this one all share a hidden seam, a place where you can pry them open and find a human hand inside. The Boston clip had an editor who stitched it. The Spacey joke had writers who heard a rumor. The Jenner line had gossip floating in the air for anyone to grab. Pull on any of those threads and the magic unravels into something ordinary. Somebody knew something, or somebody faked something, and the spooky surface gives way to a plain answer underneath. The case in this section has no such seam. There is no editor, no rumor, no whisper, nothing anyone could have planned. There is only timing. And the timing is so exact, so cruel, and so completely beyond anyone's control that it remains the single hardest Family Guy moment to wave away, even for people who roll their eyes at every other prediction story. The episode at the center of it comes from the show's 10th season, and it works a little differently than a normal episode. Instead of one long story, it is built out of several shorter ones strung together, the kind of setup the show uses now and then to fit in jokes that would not fill a whole half hour on their own. Brian and Stewie sit and go through letters sent in by viewers, and each letter spins off into its own little tale. One of those short tales is the one that matters here. In that segment, Peter is granted a strange power. Whatever he touches, and whoever he touches, turns into the comedian and actor Robin Williams. Anyone reading this knows Robin Williams even without trying. He was one of the most beloved performers of his time, a man whose energy seemed to have no bottom, famous for playing warm, funny, larger-than-life characters in movie after movie that people grew up on. He was the kind of star whose presence felt like comfort. So the joke starts in a happy place. Peter touches things, and the world fills up with Robin Williams, with all those familiar, beloved faces appearing everywhere at once. Then the show does the dark turn it loves to do. The wonderful thing becomes a nightmare through sheer overload. Everything Peter touches keeps turning into Robin Williams, and there is no off switch, and the joy curdles into something suffocating. Peter cannot make it stop. He becomes so overwhelmed and so desperate to end the constant transformation that he tries to take his own life, more than once. Each attempt fails in a grim cartoon way, the weapons themselves turning into Robin Williams characters before they can do anything. The segment plays his repeated suicide attempts for dark laughs, the way the show plays almost everything, pushing a terrible idea through a comedy filter until the audience is not sure whether to laugh or wince. It is bleak humor about a man so trapped by the constant presence of Robin Williams that he wants to die, and cannot even manage that, because Robin Williams keeps getting in the way. When it first aired in the United States, it was just another dark Family Guy segment. Pitch black, a little uncomfortable, quickly absorbed into the pile of episodes and forgotten by most viewers. There was no reason for it to be anything more than that. It had no connection to the real Robin Williams, beyond using his name and his work as the engine for a joke, which the show does with hundreds of famous people. Years went by. The episode sat in the archive like all the others. Now move ahead to August 11, 2014. On that day, the real Robin Williams died. He took his own life. The news landed like a blow that nobody saw coming, because the public image of the man was so tied to joy and warmth and boundless energy that the idea of him in that kind of private pain felt impossible to hold. People who had never met him grieved as if they had. He had been a fixture in so many childhoods and so many living rooms that his death felt personal to millions of strangers. It was one of those deaths that stops the whole world for a moment and makes everyone quiet. And on that exact same day, in another country, on a different network, that old Family Guy segment happened happened to be scheduled to air again. In the United Kingdom, a channel was running a repeat of that 10th season episode, the one with the Robin Williams segment, as a normal part of its schedule. This was not a special airing. Nobody chose it for that day on purpose. It was a rerun slotted in weeks or months in advance the way reruns always are, picked by a schedule and a calendar with no knowledge of anything. The episode began that evening like any other repeat, and it played through to its end. The Robin Williams segment ran. Peter turning everything he touched into Robin Williams. Peter overwhelmed. Peter trying again and again to end his own life and being stopped each time. The episode finished at around 25 minutes before midnight, local time, and the news of Robin Williams' death broke roughly 25 minutes later. Sit with how narrow that gap is. A repeat of an episode in which a character is driven to repeated suicide attempts by an endless flood of Robin Williams ended, and within about half an hour, the public learned that the real Robin Williams had died by suicide. The same evening, the same hour, almost, an episode about a man unable to escape Robin Williams, signing off into the dark just before the world found out Robin Williams himself was gone, in the most painful way the segment had played for laughs. Viewers who had been watching reacted the moment the news came through. Some of them had just finished laughing or wincing at a cartoon making jokes about suicide, and then learned that a man they loved had died of the very thing the cartoon had just turned into comedy. The feeling that swept through people was not amusement, and it was not the thrill of a clever prediction. It was something closer to horror. A few people pointed out, with real discomfort, that Peter had attempted suicide in the very episode that had just played. The coincidence was not fun. It was the kind of thing that makes the hair on your arms stand up and makes you want to turn the television off. The channel that aired it had to say something, because people noticed and people were shaken. A spokesperson for the broadcaster acknowledged the timing plainly. The statement made clear what the situation actually was. The episode ended just as the news about his death broke. It was a repeat. There was no hidden meaning, no plan, no message. A scheduled rerun had simply, by terrible chance, finished minutes before the news arrived. That was the entire truth of it, stated without drama, because the truth needed no drama. The facts alone were heavy enough. This is the case that resists every easy explanation, and it is worth being honest about why. The Boston clip could be debunked because it was fake. Somebody made it. The Spacey joke could be explained because the writers admitted hearing a rumor. The Jenner line could be deflated because most of it was wrong and the rest was gossip. Each of those had a lever you could pull to make the mystery collapse. This one has nothing like that. The episode was made years earlier with no knowledge of anything. The decision to air it that night was made by a schedule, not a person reaching for meaning. The real death was a private tragedy that no writer in a comedy room could have known about or seen coming. Every piece of this was disconnected from every other piece, and yet they all arrived in the same half hour, in different countries, with no thread linking them at all. There is genuinely no hidden hand to find, because there was no hand, there was only chance. And that is exactly the point worth making, because this case, more than any of the others, shows what these coincidences actually are, when you strip away the wish for them to mean something. This was the purest possible example of timing, with no intention behind it. Nobody knew. Nobody could have known. The episode did not predict anything. It was written about a famous man using his name and his work as a joke, the way the show uses everyone, and it happened to choose suicide as its dark comedic engine because the show reaches for dark engines constantly. Out of the enormous number of episodes, dark segments, and grim jokes the show has produced, the odds that one of them would someday air close to a matching real event were never small. Given enough episodes and enough years, something like this becomes almost bound to happen eventually. The shock is not that it happened. The shock is how perfectly the clock lined up the one time it did. That is the uncomfortable truth sitting under all of these stories, and this case makes it impossible to look away from. A show that has aired for decades, that fills every episode with dozens of jokes about death and disaster and famous people, is firing off so many specific dark ideas that the calendar will eventually fold one of them right on top of reality. It is not skill, it is not sight, it is volume meeting time. When you throw enough darts for enough years, one of them lands on a night you will never forget, and every other dart that missed gets quietly swept off the floor and never spoken of again. But notice what makes this one feel so different from the others, even though it is, underneath, the same kind of coincidence. The Boston case made people angry, because it was a fraud aimed at a tragedy. The Spacey case made people uneasy, because the writers really had heard something. The Jenner case made people impressed, because one word happened to hit. This case made people feel something quieter and heavier. It made them feel the cold edge of pure chance, the sense that the universe can arrange a set of events into a shape so cruel and so exact that no explanation is possible, and none is even comforting. There is no villain here to blame, and no clever writer to credit. There is just a beloved man gone too soon, and a cartoon that happened to be making jokes about his death in the final minutes before the world found out. It is the kind of coincidence that does not make you suspicious. It makes you sad. That difference in feeling matters for understanding the whole prediction phenomenon. People treat all of these moments as one thing, as proof the show knows. They are not one thing. They are a collection of completely separate events, each with its own cause, or its own lack of any cause, bound together only by the fact that an audience wanted to see a pattern. Some make you angry, some make you you uneasy, some impress you, and at least one just quietly breaks your heart and offers you nothing to hold on to except the fact that sometimes timing is simply, terribly, an accident. Recognizing that the feelings are different is the first real clue that the causes are different too, and that the single magic explanation everyone reaches for cannot possibly cover them all. 4 cases deep, the so-called prophecy power of Family Guy has come apart in 4 different directions, and not one of them turned out to need a crystal ball. A fake clip, a leaked rumor, a lucky word, a cruel accident of scheduling, 4 masks, 4 ordinary faces underneath, no real magic anywhere. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. So the prophecy stories are mostly hot air, propped up by editing and gossip and the way people forget every miss. That settles one whole class of Family Guy mysteries. It does nothing at all for the other class, the one that does not care about the news or the future, the one that turns inward and asks a far stranger question. What if the strange thing about the show is not that it predicts the world outside the screen, but that something is deeply, secretly wrong inside the screen itself? There is a theory, whispered among fans for years, that says the cheerful little town these characters live in is not what it appears to be at all, and that the people in it are not, in the way that matters most, even alive. Section 5. The town that might be hell. Everything up to this point has been about the show looking outward, at the real world, at real events and real people, and seeming to know things it should not. Those mysteries all faced the same direction. They asked whether the cartoon could somehow see past the edge of the screen into the future. The answer, 4 times over, turned out to be no, with a different ordinary explanation hiding behind each spooky surface. Now the direction flips. There is a whole other family of Family Guy mysteries that have nothing to do with the news or the future. These ones turn inward. They ignore the real world completely and stare instead at the world inside the show, at the little seaside town and the family who lives there, and they ask a question that is somehow more unsettling than any prediction. What if something is deeply wrong with that town itself? What if the cheerful place these characters call home is not a normal place at all? What if the people in it are not, in the way that counts most, even alive? This is the theory that the town of Quahog is a kind of afterlife, and that the Griffins are dead. To feel why so many fans find this idea hard to shake, you have to look closely at how the family is actually built, because the strangeness was there from the very first episodes, sitting in plain sight, dressed up as comedy. Each member of this family is trapped inside a body or a life that fights against who they really are on the inside. That mismatch is the engine of the whole theory. Start with Stewie, the baby. By the rules of the show, he is 1 year old. He cannot walk well, he is carried around, he sits in a high chair, he wears footy pajamas, and the adults around him mostly cannot understand a word he says. Yet inside that helpless little body is a brilliant, scheming mind. Stewie builds working machines that should be impossible. He speaks with a fancy accent and a huge vocabulary. He plots, he plans, he holds grudges, and for years his main goal was to kill his own mother and take over the world. A genius mind locked inside an infant who can barely feed himself. The smartest person in the house, trapped in the one body that nobody will take seriously. Then there is Brian, the family dog. Brian is the most thoughtful character in the show. He reads books, he tries to write a novel, he argues about politics and religion, he sees through other people's nonsense, and he carries himself like the most educated person in any room. But he is a dog. He walks on 2 legs and drinks martinis and talks like a college professor, and at the end of the day he sleeps in the house as a pet and gets treated like an animal whenever it is convenient for a joke. A sharp, longing, deeply human mind, sealed inside the body of a creature that the world will only ever see as a dog. Lois, the mother, came from money. The show establishes that she was born into a wealthy, important family, the kind of background that should have led to a comfortable, glamorous life. Instead, she is stuck in a small house in a small town, married to a loud, foolish man, scraping by, surrounded by chaos, her old life of privilege gone. A rich, popular young woman, trapped in a cramped, money-tight existence she seems far too good for. Peter, the father, is a grown man with a job and a family and a mortgage, but he behaves like an overgrown child who never let go of being young. He throws tantrums, he chases silly obsessions, he ignores responsibility, and he clings to the past as if the years never move. A man who is supposed to be an adult, trapped in the mind of a boy who refuses to grow up. Look at all 4 together, and a pattern jumps out. Every one of them is a person whose true self is at war with the shell they are stuck in. The genius is a baby. The intellectual is a dog. The heiress is a struggling housewife. The man is a child. Each of them wants to be something they are not allowed to be, and each of them is held inside a form that makes that impossible. The theory takes that pattern and offers a chilling reason for it. These people are not living. They are being punished. Or, in a softer version, they are being given a chance to fix themselves. Either way, the town is not a home. It is a waiting room between life and whatever comes after, a place where flawed souls are sorted out. The fans who believe this point to specific things they were like in their supposed past lives, the lives they lived before ending up in Quahog. Peter, in this reading, was a bully and a brute who frightened his family, and now he is forced to live alongside people who push back at him instead of bowing down. Lois, they say, was vain and used people and chased status, and now she is stripped of all of it. The children, in some versions, were cruel to others when they were alive, and now they are forced to be the kind of kids they used to torment. Each punishment fits the crime. Each soul gets the exact life that would teach it the lesson it failed to learn. That is the shape of the theory, and it is built entirely out of pieces the show really did put on screen, just read in a much darker light than the writers ever meant. Now comes the part of the theory that fans treat as the real proof, the thing that makes it feel like more than a fun idea. It has to do with how the characters changed over the show's long life. Anyone who has watched Family Guy across many seasons knows the people in it are not quite the same as they used to be. The early version of the show and the later version feel different, and the characters drifted in noticeable directions. Stewie is the clearest case. In the beginning, he was genuinely menacing, a tiny villain obsessed with murder and world domination, dripping with cruelty. Over the years, that sharpness softened. The murder plots faded. He became gentler, sillier, more like an actual strange child and less like a monster in a high chair. He grew, in a way, into a kinder version of himself. Other characters drifted the opposite way. Many longtime viewers feel that Peter got crueler and dumber as the seasons piled up, that Lois got harder and meaner, that the warmth the family once had thinned out. The whole show, in the eyes of a lot of fans, grew more mean-spirited as it aged, sharper edged, less tender than it was at the start. The purgatory theory grabs that drift and uses it as evidence. If these souls are working off their sins, then change is exactly what you would expect to see. Stewie softening is Stewie slowly learning his lesson, moving closer to being allowed to leave. The ones who got worse are the ones failing the test, sinking deeper instead of rising up. The theory turns a simple fact about a long-running cartoon, that its characters slowly changed, into the visible progress of dead souls being judged. Every shift in personality becomes a clue. The show getting meaner becomes the sound of people running out of chances. It is a tidy, creepy little system, and once it gets into your head, it is genuinely hard to watch the show the same way again. A goofy comedy about a dumb dad starts to look like a quiet portrait of trapped, struggling ghosts who do not even know they are dead. Here is where honesty has to step in, because as gripping as the theory is, it is a fan theory and nothing more. The people who make the show never said any of this. There is no episode where it is revealed that the town is an afterlife. There is no secret line confirming the family is dead. No writer has come forward to say this was the hidden plan all along. It lives entirely in the minds of viewers, built out of real details but pointing at a meaning the creators never put there. Calling it canon would be a lie. It is a reading, a guess, a story fans tell on top of the story the show actually tells. And there is a much plainer explanation for every single piece of evidence the theory leans on. An explanation that does not require anyone to be dead. The mismatch between inner self and outer shell, the genius baby and the smart dog, was never a clue about the afterlife. It was the joke. The entire comedy of those characters comes from the gap between what they are and what they seem. A baby who talks like an evil mastermind is funny because babies are helpless. A dog who acts like a snobby author is funny because dogs are not supposed to think at all. The writers built those gaps on purpose because gaps like that are where jokes live. The thing the theory treats as eerie evidence is just the basic design of the comedy, working exactly as intended. The character drift has an equally ordinary cause. Shows that run for decades change because the people writing them change. Writers come and go. Tastes shift. The whole style of television comedy moves over 20+ years. A show that started in one era and kept going into a completely different one is going to feel different because the world around it and the staff inside it are different. Stewie softened partly because his original murderous edge was hard to sustain for hundreds of episodes, and partly because the writers found him funnier as a strange child than as a tiny killer. The family got broader and louder over time because that is what happened to the show's whole sense of humor. None of it needs a supernatural reason. Long shows drift. That is simply what long shows do. And the everyone is dead idea is not even special to this show. Almost every cartoon with a devoted fan base eventually grows a version of the same theory. Fans of many different animated series have decided, at one point or another, that the characters are secretly dead, secretly in an afterlife, secretly being punished. It is one of the most common fan theories that exists, a kind of template that gets stamped onto show after show. The reason it keeps appearing is not that all these cartoons are secretly about death. The reason is that the theory is satisfying. It takes a goofy, weightless world and gives it hidden depth and dark stakes. It makes a silly show feel like it secretly means something enormous. People want their childhood favorites to be deeper than they look, and the dead all along theory is a ready-made way to grant that wish. That is the real engine here, and it connects back to everything in the earlier sections in a quiet way. The prediction stories came from people wanting the show to know secret things about the world. This theory comes from people wanting the show to be secretly hiding a profound truth about its own characters. Both are the same human hunger pointed in two directions. The desire to find more meaning than is actually there. The refusal to accept that a dumb cartoon might just be a dumb cartoon. People look at a baby genius and a talking dog and a struggling family in a small town, and some part of them insists that it cannot only be a joke, that there has to be a reason underneath, a system, a secret. The purgatory theory hands them that reason, and it does not matter that the writers never intended it. The theory feels true, and feeling true is often all a good fan theory needs to spread. So the the verdict is split the way these things usually are. The evidence is real. The character drift is real. The inner-outer mismatch is real. Every detail the theory points to genuinely exists in the show. But the meaning is invented. The town being an afterlife is a story fans wrote, not a truth the creators buried. It is one of the most beloved Family Guy theories precisely because it works so well as a story, and it survives not on proof, but on how badly people want a goofy world to secretly be something more. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. What makes this theory so durable, though, is that it tries to explain why the characters change. It reaches for a reason behind the drift. And that hunger for a reason, that need to explain the strange evolution of these people, did not stop with the afterlife idea. Other fans went looking for a different cause, one that does not need anyone to be dead, one rooted in something physical and poisonous sitting right there in the town. They found it in the water. And the same theory that blames that water for warping the family also dares to explain the show's single most famous habit, the random jokes that interrupt every episode, claiming those bizarre little side trips are not jokes at all, but something the characters are actually seeing. Section 6, Something in the Water. The afterlife theory tried to explain why the characters drifted by saying their souls were being judged. It reached past the world for an answer, into punishment and the great beyond, but not every fan wanted to leave the real world behind to make sense of the show. Some looked at the same puzzle, the same slow warping of these people over the years, and went hunting for a cause that did not need anyone to be dead. They wanted something physical, something that could sit right there in the town, ordinary and poisonous, quietly bending everyone who lived near it. They found their answer in the water. This is the theory that the town of Quahog is being slowly poisoned, that the people in it are being damaged by something foul in the water supply, and that this contamination explains both the way the characters have changed and, in its boldest form, the show's single strangest habit. The starting point of the theory is a real detail from the show itself, which is part of why it caught on. In an episode from the 5th season, the show establishes that the local lake the town sits beside is badly polluted. The water is shown to be dirty, contaminated, unhealthy. This is not something fans made up out of nothing. The show put the polluted lake on screen as a plot point, treated it as a known problem in the town, and then, the way the show treats most things, mostly moved on and forgot about it. A throwaway fact about a dirty lake, dropped into one episode and left there. Fans picked that fact up off the floor and ran somewhere dark with it. The thinking goes like this. If the town's water is poisoned, and the people of the town drink that water every single day, year after year, then over time that poison would build up inside them. And poison that builds up in the body, especially the kind that affects the brain, does not leave a person the same. It changes how they think. It changes how they behave. It can make a person duller, angrier, stranger, less like who they used to be. So the slow drift in the characters, the same drift the afterlife theory blamed on judgment, this theory blames on brain damage. Years of drinking bad water, slowly rotting the minds of everyone in town. The theory even tries to account for why different characters drifted in different directions. Peter, by this reading, got noticeably dumber and more reckless as the seasons went on, which is exactly what you would expect from a man whose brain is being slowly damaged by what he drinks. Lois grew harder and meaner. Chris, the son, stayed in his own foggy world. The whole family, soaking in the same poisoned water, each warping in their own way as the damage accumulated. And the one character who seems to have improved instead of declined, the baby Stewie who softened over time, can even be folded in, since a baby drinks differently, is fed differently, and might simply be affected on a different timeline than the adults guzzling tap water for decades. So far, this is just a darker, more grounded cousin of the afterlife theory. Same puzzle, the character drift, with a physical cause swapped in for a supernatural one. If the theory stopped there, it would be a clever little idea, and not much more. But it does not stop there. It makes one more leap, and that leap is what turned it from a minor fan idea into something people genuinely cannot stop thinking about once they hear it. The theory claims that the poison explains the cutaways. To understand why that is such a wild and clever swing, you have to remember what the cutaways are, because they are the heart of the entire show. As covered earlier, a cutaway is one of those random side jokes Family Guy fires off constantly. The main story stops, and suddenly the show jumps to some bizarre, unrelated scene, a strange memory, a weird comparison, an impossible little fantasy, and it plays for a few seconds before snapping back. These interruptions are everywhere. They are the most recognizable thing about the show, its signature move, the device it is most copied and most mocked for. Dozens of them in every episode. The show practically runs on them. For the entire life of the show, everyone has understood the cutaways as exactly what they look like. They are jokes. They are the writers stepping outside the story to throw in a gag that would not fit anywhere else. Nobody inside the show is supposed to be experiencing them. They are a tool the show uses to talk to the audience, a way of making a joke by jumping to a picture of it. That is the plain truth of what a cutaway is. A storytelling trick aimed at the people watching at home. The water theory looks at that and says something genuinely creepy. What if the cutaways are not jokes aimed at us? What if they are things the characters are actually seeing? What if the poison in the water has damaged their minds so badly that they hallucinate? What if, when the show jumps to some bizarre random random vision. That is the show letting us see the inside of a poisoned brain in real time. The strange interruptions in this reading are not the writers being clever. They are the symptoms of a town full of people whose minds are coming apart, flashing with broken images and impossible scenes, because the thing they have been drinking for years has finally scrambled their hold on reality. Sit with how much that single idea reshapes the whole show. If the theory is true, then Family Guy is not a comedy that interrupts itself with jokes. It is the story of a family slowly losing their grip, narrated from inside their breaking minds, and the laughter is just us watching their sickness without realizing what we are seeing. Every cutaway becomes a flash of a hallucination. Every weird tangent becomes proof that these people cannot tell what is real anymore. The most famous comedic device in the show gets reread as the saddest possible thing, a medical symptom dressed up as a punchline. The town is not poisoned in a way that simply makes people dumb. It is poisoned in a way that fractures the very thing that lets a person know what is real and what is not. That is why this theory spread. It does the thing a great fan theory always does. It takes something you have seen 1,000 times, something you thought you completely understood, and it makes you see it differently. After hearing this idea, a person can never watch a cutaway in quite the same innocent way again. The joke now has a shadow behind it. That shift in how you see a familiar thing is exactly the feeling fans chase, and this theory delivers it better than almost any other. Now the honesty, because this theory needs it just as much as the last one did. This is a fan theory. The creators never said it. There is no episode that confirms the water is driving anyone mad. There is no scene where it is revealed that the cutaways are hallucinations. No writer has stepped forward to say this was the secret design. The polluted lake is real, a genuine detail from the 5th season, but everything built on top of it is invention. Fans took one real fact and constructed an entire hidden meaning around it that the show itself never supports. As a reading, it is brilliant. As a claim about what the show actually is, it is a guess, and a guess with nothing official behind it. And the plain explanation for the cutaways is, once again, sitting right there in the open. The cutaways are jokes because the show is a comedy that decided, very early on, to tell jokes that way. The whole style of Family Guy was built around the idea of interrupting the story to jump to a quick gag, because that structure let the writers cram in far more jokes than a normal show could fit. A regular sitcom has to make its jokes out of the situation the characters are actually in. Family Guy freed itself from that by inventing a way to jump to any joke at any time, no matter how unrelated. That is a writing choice, made for the simple reason that it produces more laughs per minute. It has nothing to do with anyone's brain. It is the show's engine, chosen on purpose, decades ago, because it works. There is also a problem the theory cannot really solve, which is that the cutaways often show things none of the characters could possibly be imagining. Many cutaways jump to events from history, to the private lives of celebrities the characters have never met, to scenes happening in places no one in the family has ever been. A hallucination has to come from inside the mind of the person having it, built out of things that person knows or fears. But the show's cutaways constantly reach far outside anything the characters could know, into corners of the world they have no connection to at all. That only makes sense if the cutaways are coming from the writers, who know everything and can show anything, rather than from the damaged mind of a man sitting on a couch in a small town. The theory works beautifully right up until you notice that the visions know far more than the people supposedly having them. Still, it is worth respecting why this theory grabs people so hard, because it reveals the same hunger that has run underneath every mystery so far. Look at what the fans are really doing here. They are taking the most artificial thing about the show, the most obvious writing trick, the cutaway, and they are straining to find a way for it to be real inside the story. They cannot accept that it is simply a joke device. They need it to mean something within the world of the show, to be a real thing the characters are really experiencing. That is the same impulse that turned a dirty lake into a tale of brain damage, the same impulse that turned a baby genius into a punished soul, the same impulse that turned a lucky joke into a prediction. Over and over, fans refuse to let a thing just be a tool or a coincidence. They reach for a hidden in-world reason, because a hidden reason is more thrilling than the truth that someone simply wrote it that way to be funny. This case and the Afterlife case make an interesting pair because they are rivals trying to solve the exact same mystery. Both are obsessed with why the characters change. One blames the great beyond, one blames the tap water. They cannot both be the secret truth, and in fact neither is, because the real reason the characters changed is that the show ran for over 20 years with shifting writers and shifting tastes. But the existence of two competing theories aimed at the same puzzle tells you something important. It tells you that the drift in the characters bothered fans so much that they built multiple elaborate explanations for it, rather than accept the boring real one. The puzzle was emotionally unacceptable in its plain form, so people manufactured deeper answers, more than one, each insisting the change had to mean something. So the water theory ends in the same place as the afterlife theory, on a knife's edge between real and invented. The polluted lake is genuine. The character drift is genuine. The cutaways are genuine. Every brick the theory is built from is real. But the house assembled out of those bricks, the poisoned minds, the hallucinated jokes, the slow rot of a whole town, is something fans dreamed up and the show never confirmed. It is one of the most clever fan theories the show has ever inspired. inspired. And it is clever precisely because it dares to explain the one thing everyone thought needed no explaining. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. These first two big theories both treated the family as a unit, asking what was wrong with all of them at once, whether dead or poisoned. But some of the most stubborn fan theories zoom in instead, fixing on one single character and asking who that person really is underneath. And the character fans have picked apart more than any other is the one who barely gets a single kind word in the entire run of the show. The family member treated as a punching bag in nearly every episode. There is a theory that the reason she is treated so terribly, so relentlessly, by her own family is that she does not truly belong to that family at all. Section 7. The daughter nobody wanted. The two big theories before this one both treated the family as a single lump, asking what had gone wrong with all of them together, dead or poisoned, judged or rotting, but always as a group. Some of the most stubborn fan theories work the opposite way. They zoom all the way in on one single person and ask a sharper question. Not what is wrong with the family, but who is this one character, really, underneath everything the show has told us? And the character fans have picked apart more than almost any other is the one who gets treated worse than anyone else in the entire show. The teenage daughter, Meg. To understand the theory, you first have to understand just how badly this character is treated, because the cruelty is the whole reason the theory exists. Meg is the oldest child of the family. She is a teenage girl trying to do the normal things teenage girls do, wanting friends, wanting to be liked, wanting to be noticed in a good way for once. And the show, episode after episode, year after year, beats her down for it. Her own family insults her constantly. Her father is openly disgusted by her. Her mother offers little warmth and sometimes joins in. Her brother torments her. Even the family dog looks down on her. Strangers mock her. The world of the show seems organized around the single idea that Meg is worthless, and everyone in it, family and stranger alike, treats her like garbage. This goes far past normal sibling teasing or the usual way sitcom families bicker. The abuse aimed at Meg is relentless and it is personal. There is a running pattern where, if Meg so much as speaks up in a family conversation, her father will tell her to shut up in a flat, dismissive way, as if her having an opinion at all is offensive. She is the target of jokes about being ugly, unwanted, unlovable. The show has built her, over hundreds of episodes, into a kind of permanent punching bag. The one character it is always safe to hurt. Whatever bad thing needs to land on someone for a joke, it lands on Meg. Watching that pattern long enough, a question starts to form on its own. Why her? Why is this one girl singled out for a level of cruelty the show does not aim at anyone else with the same consistency? The other characters get mocked, sure, but they also get loved, get wins, get tender moments. Meg gets almost none. She absorbs an amount of hatred that feels strange and excessive even by the show's own harsh standards. And when something feels that off, fans go looking for a reason. The theory they landed on is simple and sad. Meg is treated like she does not belong in the family because, in some deep sense, she does not belong in the family. The idea comes in a few flavors. The most common version is that Meg is not truly the biological child of both parents, that she was adopted or born from a situation the family does not talk about, and that on some buried level everyone knows it. The cruelty, in this reading, is the family unconsciously pushing away the one who is not really one of them. They cannot say why they reject her so completely, so they just do it, relentlessly, because something in the household knows she is an outsider, wearing the costume of a daughter. There is a darker, stranger branch of this theory too, one that twists the family tree into a knot. Some fans have proposed that Meg is not the daughter of the household at all in the normal sense, but is secretly connected to the baby Stewie in a way that turns the whole family upside down. The exact shapes of these versions get tangled and grim, and they pile guess upon guess, but they all reach for the same underlying feeling: that Meg's place in the family is a lie, that the official story of who she is does not match the way she is treated, and that the mismatch hides a secret about her true origin. Why does a theory like this take hold so strongly? Because it does something the cruelty itself cannot do. It gives the cruelty a reason. Watching a family torment an innocent girl for no reason at all is genuinely uncomfortable. It sits badly. The human mind wants the suffering to make sense, wants there to be a cause, because senseless cruelty is harder to watch than cruelty with an explanation behind it. The theory swoops in and offers that explanation. Meg is hated because she is secretly an outsider. Suddenly the discomfort has somewhere to go. The abuse stops being random meanness and becomes a clue, a symptom of a hidden truth. People would rather believe Meg is a secret outsider than accept that a show would torture a sweet, ordinary girl simply because it was funny to the writers. So the theory is really a kind of mercy that fans are trying to extend to a character they feel sorry for. It rewrites her endless humiliation as evidence of a mystery rather than evidence of pure unkindness. That is a generous instinct, and it is the same instinct that powered the afterlife theory and the water theory, the refusal to let cruelty or strangeness just be what it is, the need to find a deeper reason underneath. Now the honesty, and this one cuts in two directions, because part of the Meg situation is invented by fans, and part of it is shockingly real. The invented part is the secret origin theory itself. The idea that Meg Meg was adopted, or that she is secretly tied to Stewie, or that the family rejects her because they somehow know she is not truly theirs, is a fan theory with no real support behind it. The show has not built a hidden storyline confirming that Meg is an outsider by blood. The household treats her as their daughter in the basic facts of the world. The secret origin idea is something viewers constructed to explain the cruelty, not something the creators planted as a buried truth. As a theory about her birth, it is a guess, and a thin one. But here is the part that is not a guess at all. The part that is 100% real, and far more revealing than any birth secret could ever be. The true reason Meg is treated so horribly has nothing to do with anything inside the story. It has to do with how the show is made. For most of the show's run, Meg has had almost nothing to do. The writers, by their own pattern of behavior over the years, simply never figured out a strong, clear role for her the way they did for the others. Peter is the idiot dad, Stewie is the evil genius baby, Brian is the thinking dog, Lois is the mother holding it together, Chris has his own oddball lane. Meg ended up as the leftover, the character without a strong comedic engine of her own, and a show that runs on jokes needs every character to be useful for jokes. So the writers found a use for her. They made her the target. Her entire function, across hundreds of episodes, became absorbing abuse so the other characters could be funny by dishing it out. She is the punching bag because the show needed a punching bag, and she was the character without enough else going on to protect her from the role. In other words, the reason Meg is treated like she does not belong is a behind-the-scenes reason, not an in-story one. She is hated by the family because the writers decided her job was to be hated, because cruelty aimed at her produced easy laughs, and because they never developed her into anything that would have made that cruelty feel wrong to keep using. The mismatch fans noticed is completely real. They were right that something is off about how Meg is treated. They just reached for an in-world secret to explain a thing that actually comes from the writer's room. The discomfort is real, the cause is just less mysterious and, in its own way, sadder than the theory. A character is suffering endlessly not because of a hidden truth about her birth, but because she was the one the show chose to sacrifice for jokes. There is something almost poignant buried in that, and it loops back to the show's own behavior in a way fans have noticed. Every so often across the years, the show itself seems to flicker with a faint awareness that the way it treats Meg is genuinely cruel. There have been rare moments where the abuse is briefly acknowledged, where a sliver of sympathy breaks through, where the show seems to glance at what it has been doing to this character and feel a flash of something like guilt before going right back to the same old pattern. Those moments are scattered and they never last, but they exist, and they tell you the people making the show were at least dimly aware that Meg had become something darker than a normal comedic target. The punching bag occasionally got a line that suggested even the writers knew the punching had gone too far. That awareness is part of why the secret origin theory feels so plausible to fans. The show treats Meg with just enough strangeness, just enough excess, just enough occasional flickers of guilt, that it genuinely seems like there might be something hidden underneath. Viewers are pattern-finding creatures, and the pattern here, a girl singled out for special cruelty by everyone around her, is exactly the kind of pattern that looks like it must point to a secret. The theory is the natural result of a real signal being read as a hidden message. The signal is true, the hidden message is imagined. This case fits the larger picture forming across all these theories, and it sharpens it. The prediction stories came from fans wanting the show to secretly know the outside world. The afterlife and water theories came from fans wanting the town to secretly be something deeper and darker than a comedy setting. And the Meg theory comes from fans wanting a character's pain to secretly mean something, to be a clue rather than just cruelty. Each time, the engine is the same. People look at something in the show that bothers them or fascinates them, something that feels like it cannot just be what it appears to be, and they build a hidden explanation to satisfy that feeling. And each time, the real explanation turns out to live outside the story, in the choices of the writers, the passage of time, the simple mechanics of making a comedy for decades. The hidden truth fans keep digging for is almost always the same boring human truth. Someone wrote it that way, for a reason that has nothing to do with the magic the audience is hoping to find. What makes the Meg theory linger, though, is that the feeling underneath it is correct, even when the theory is wrong. Fans sense that Meg's treatment was unjust, excessive, strange, and they were right to sense it. They just aimed that correct feeling at a made-up cause. The instinct was sound. The conclusion was fiction. That gap between a true feeling and a false explanation is the exact space where fan theories are born, and the Meg theory may be the clearest example of it in the entire show. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. So a pattern has now repeated across several theories. Fans take a real, noticeable thing about a character, the cruelty toward Meg, the genius of Stewie, the mind of Brian, and they spin it into a hidden secret about who that person truly is. Most of the time, the secret is invention, and the real cause is the writers. But there is one character whose hidden secret was not invented by fans at all. It was confirmed, on the record, by the man who created the show, who admitted that an entire episode was written, fully scripted, to reveal a truth about this character that he then decided to bury. The character is the baby. And the secret is one the show has been hinting at and dancing around for more than 20 years. Section 8, The Secret secret in the high chair. The Meg theory ended on a frustrating note for anyone who loves a good mystery. Fans sensed a real secret, dug hard for it, and came up with an invented answer, while the true cause sat quietly behind the scenes in the writer's room. That is how most of these theories go. A real feeling, a false explanation, a boring truth underneath. This one breaks the pattern, because here, for once, is a hidden secret about a character that fans did not have to invent. The man who created the show confirmed it himself, out loud, more than once. He admitted that an entire episode was written, taken all the way to a finished script, built specifically to reveal this truth, and then deliberately shelved so the truth could stay buried. The character is the baby, Stewie, and the secret is one the show had been hinting at, winking at, and tiptoeing around for over 20 years. The question fans had asked for ages was simple: is Stewie gay? To see why the question even comes up, you have to look at how Stewie was built and how he behaved across the years, because the show planted the seeds of this from very early on and kept watering them. On the surface, Stewie started as a one-year-old evil genius obsessed with killing his mother and ruling the world. That was his original engine. But running alongside the villain stuff almost from the start were countless little moments that pointed in another direction entirely. Stewie has a particular way of speaking and carrying himself. He shows flashes of crushes on other boys and men. He drops comments, reactions, and asides that the show clearly means as hints about his attraction. Over hundreds of episodes, these moments piled up into a mountain. The hints were not subtle and they were not rare. They were a steady drumbeat threaded through the whole run of the show. At the same time, the show kept its options open by also giving Stewie the occasional moment pointing the other way. There were episodes where he showed interest in a girl, where he acted out a crush on a female character, where the show seemed to pull back from committing, so the picture stayed deliberately cloudy. For every hint that Stewie was gay, there was a smaller hint that maybe he was not, and the show used that fog to keep getting jokes from both directions without ever planting a flag. Fans noticed all of it: the heavy lean one way and the occasional dodge the other way, and the question hung in the air for 2 decades. The audience could see the show was playing a game with Stewie's identity. They just could not tell where the game was supposed to end. Now here is the part that lifts this out of fan theory territory and into confirmed fact, because the creator of the show told the world directly what was going on behind that fog. Seth MacFarlane, who created Stewie and gives him his voice, spoke about this openly. He explained that the team had genuinely wrestled with Stewie's identity and that the leaning of the character was real and intentional, not an accident fans were imagining. He described Stewie as a character they often wrote as if they were writing a gay character, and he was candid that the hints were on purpose. He even offered a blunt picture of where he thought Stewie would end up as a grown person, saying Stewie would likely turn out to be either gay or, in the other direction, a deeply repressed and unhappy version of the opposite. That is a striking thing for a creator to say. It confirms that the years of hints were a real thread the show was pulling on, not a pattern fans invented out of nothing the way they invented Meg's secret birth. And then comes the detail that makes this the strongest case in the whole inward-facing batch of mysteries. MacFarlane revealed that they had actually written a whole episode in which Stewie comes out. Not an idea, not a pitch tossed around and dropped. A real episode, taken all the way to a finished script. He described what it was about. The story had Stewie dealing with harassment from other kids, and in response, in classic Family Guy fashion, Stewie uses time travel to go back into the distant past and stop a certain ancient passage from ever being written, a passage that the world has long used to condemn people like him. The plan was for the episode to confront Stewie's identity head-on and let him claim it. That episode never aired. MacFarlane and the team made a choice to shelve it. The reason he gave was about Stewie's age. Stewie is supposed to be 1 year old. The team decided it felt wrong, or at least premature, to have a 1-year-old declare a fixed identity, and they judged that it made more sense to keep things vague. So the finished script was set aside, and the show went back to its old game of hinting without confirming. A complete episode, built to reveal the truth, deliberately buried so the truth could stay foggy. Sit with what that means against everything that came before. For the afterlife theory, the water theory, the Meg theory, fans were the ones doing all the work, building secrets the creators never planted. Here the creators planted the secret, grew it for years, wrote the reveal, and then chose to hide it. The mystery fans had been chasing about Stewie was a real mystery the show was actively cultivating. The fans were right that something was there. For once, the digging was not paranoia. There genuinely was a buried episode, a buried answer, sitting in a drawer. Years later, the show finally circled back to the question in a way that is worth understanding, because it shows how the creators decided to handle the thing they had shelved. There is a later episode built almost entirely around just Stewie and a single other character, a therapist, in one room. It was promoted as the episode that would finally deal with Stewie's identity, and the way it landed was telling. Rather than have Stewie plant a flag and declare himself one fixed thing, the episode kept his identity open and uncertain. The writing leaned into the idea that his sense of himself was still unsettled, still forming, deliberately left as something not yet decided. The writers explained their reasoning, and it lines up with the original choice to shelve the coming out episode. They felt that Stewie's uncertainty about himself was valuable, that the not knowing gave the character a kind of tenderness and vulnerability that mattered. One of the writers put the thinking plainly, saying that whether Stewie Stewie is gay or not was not something they wanted to lock down while he is a 1-year-old, and that the uncertainty itself was the point worth protecting. McFarlane's own view, shared with the team, was to not lean too hard into it, on the grounds that Stewie is still a baby, that he does not know yet, and that identity can be a fluid, shifting thing rather than a fixed label stamped on early. So the show made a deliberate, repeated choice to keep Stewie's identity open rather than closed, across decades, even when they had a finished script that would have closed it. That history is the real, confirmed core of this case, and it is unusually rich because it comes straight from the people who made the show, rather than from fan guesswork. The hints were real and intentional, the internal debate was real, the coming out episode was real and really written and really shelved. The later decision to keep things fluid was real and explained on the record. There is no need to invent anything here. The facts themselves are the story. But it is worth being just as honest about the limits, because even a confirmed case has edges where guessing creeps back in. The creators leaned a certain way, wrote a certain script, and made certain comments, but they also chose, on purpose, to never give Stewie a single fixed final label inside the show itself. So while it is fully confirmed that the team treated him as leaning gay and wrote a coming out episode, it is also true that the show deliberately left the official in-story answer open. Both things are real at once. The intent leaned one direction. The final on-screen verdict was intentionally left blank. Anyone who claims the show flatly declared Stewie one thing is overstating it, and anyone who claims the gay reading was pure fan imagination is ignoring the creator's own words. The truth sits in that careful middle, and the middle is exactly where the creators wanted it to sit. There is also a fair point to make about why a creator might describe a character's identity in shifting ways over many years. McFarlane said different things at different times, leaning hard one way in some interviews and pulling back toward keeping it vague in others. Some of that is a creator genuinely thinking out loud over 2 decades about a character who kept evolving. Some of it is the practical reality that a fixed answer would shut down a source of jokes and a source of the character's depth. The fog around Stewie was useful to the show in a way the fog around Meg never was. Keeping the question open kept the character interesting and kept the comedy flexible, so the creators had real creative reasons, beyond just the in-story age explanation, to protect the uncertainty. That does not make the hints fake. It just means the vagueness was a deliberate tool, chosen for reasons both heartfelt and practical. This case stands apart from the others in the most important way, and the contrast is the lesson. Look back at the pattern. Fans took the cruelty toward Meg and invented a secret birth. Fans took the dirty lake and invented poisoned minds. Fans took the character drift and invented an afterlife. In every one of those, the real cause lived behind the scenes, and the fans had reached past it into fiction. With Stewie, the thing behind the scenes was the secret. The writer's room itself held a real, deliberate, hidden answer. So this is the one case where digging behind the curtain rewards the digger with an actual buried truth, instead of a boring shrug. The fans who suspected something was there about Stewie were not pattern-finding ghosts that did not exist. They were tracking a real thread the creators had been weaving on purpose all along. That is what makes it satisfying in a way the others are not. The Meg theory leaves you a little sad, because the real answer is just that the writers needed a punching bag. The water theory leaves you impressed but empty, because the real answer is just that long show's drift. The Stewie story leaves you with something solid in your hands, a confirmed account of a show quietly cultivating a character's identity for 20 years, writing the big reveal, then choosing tenderness and uncertainty over a clean declaration. The mystery was real, the investigation was justified, and the answer, while deliberately left open, is documented by the people responsible. Out of everything covered so far, this is the rare case where the secret in the high chair turned out to be genuinely real. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously, and that raises a sharp question about all the other characters fans have tried to crack. If the show really did hide a confirmed secret inside one character, what about the others fans are convinced are hiding something? There is one more single character mystery that stands out, aimed at a neighbor rather than a griffin. A man whose impossible luck with women has struck fans as so unnatural, so beyond any normal explanation, that they have decided he cannot simply be a man at all. They think there is something supernatural living next door. Section 9. The Thing Next Door. The Stewie case proves something important. Sometimes, when fans dig behind a character looking for a hidden secret, there really is one waiting there, confirmed by the people who made the show. That discovery makes every other single character theory feel more alive, because if the writers buried one real secret in plain sight, who is to say they did not bury others? So fans kept digging through the cast, character by character, hunting for the next hidden truth. And one of the characters they became most convinced about does not even live in the Griffin house. He lives next door. His name is Glenn Quagmire, the neighbor, and the theory about him is one of the strangest the show has ever produced. Fans have decided that Quagmire is not a normal man at all. They think he might be something supernatural, a creature wearing a human shape, a monster hiding in an ordinary house on an ordinary street. To understand why anyone would land on an idea that wild, you have to understand what Quagmire is known for in the show, because his entire character is built around one trait taken to an impossible extreme. Quagmire is obsessed with women. That is his whole thing. He is endless endlessly, desperately, relentlessly focused on chasing women, and the show has made that the core of nearly every joke he is part of for the entire run. He has a catchphrase he blurts whenever an attractive woman appears. He schemes, he prowls, he pursues, and he never, ever stops. Among a cast of strange characters, Quagmire is the one defined almost completely by this single hunger. The part that pushed fans toward the supernatural theory is not just that Quagmire chases women, it is that he succeeds, constantly, impossibly. The show presents him as a man who, against all logic, manages to attract and sleep with an unbelievable number of women. Far more than any real person ever could. Far more than makes any sense for a character who is not especially handsome, not rich, not charming in any normal way. He is, by the show's own running joke, a man whose success with women breaks the rules of reality. Women fall for him at a rate that no ordinary explanation can cover. It happens so often, so easily, and so absurdly that it stops looking like luck and starts looking like something else. Fans looked at that impossible success and asked the obvious question. How does this one unremarkable man pull off something that should be flatly impossible? And because the show is the kind of place where talking dogs and time-traveling babies are normal, some fans reached for an answer that fit that strange world. They decided Quagmire must have a power, not charm, not skill, an actual supernatural force pulling women toward him against their will and their better judgment. In the language of old myths and scary stories, they decided he might be a kind of demon, a creature that feeds on this sort of thing, disguised as a man and using an unnatural pull to draw victims in. The theory dresses his impossible success up as proof of something dark living inside him, a hidden monster whose unnatural magnetism is the real reason no woman can resist him. It sounds ridiculous laid out plainly, and in a way it is meant to be fun rather than serious. But the fans who push it point to real things in the show to back it up, and that is where it gets interesting, because they can actually cite moments that, viewed a certain way, make Quagmire look genuinely sinister rather than merely silly. The biggest piece of evidence they reach for is a moment that is far darker than Quagmire's usual goofy chasing, and it is 100% a real scene the show produced. In an episode that crosses over with the most famous cartoon family in the world, the one the Griffins are often compared to, Quagmire ends up having an affair with the mother of that other family. The husband of that family catches them together, and what Quagmire does next is shocking. He kills the husband. Then, to cover up what he has done, he murders the wife as well. And then, as the children of that family stumble onto the horror, more gunshots ring out, with the strong suggestion that Quagmire has killed them too, wiping out an entire family to protect his secret. That scene is real, and it is genuinely chilling once you stop laughing. It shows Quagmire not as a harmless horn dog, but as someone capable of cold, total, remorseless violence in service of his obsession. He does not panic. He does not break down. He simply removes everyone who could expose him, including children, and moves on. For the fans pushing the supernatural theory, that moment is the mask slipping. They argue it shows the real thing underneath the goofy neighbor, a creature that will kill without hesitation to keep feeding and keep hidden. A normal man caught in an affair would be terrified, guilty, destroyed. This man calmly erases a whole family. That coldness, they say, is not human. They stack other things on top of it. Quagmire has been around, in the show's loose and bendy sense of time, seemingly forever, with a murky past that the show has filled with all sorts of dark and strange history. His appetite never fades and never ages. His luck never runs out, no matter how poorly he treats the people he pursues. To a fan looking for a pattern, all of this can be read as the behavior of something that is not living a normal human life at all. Something older and hungrier wearing a friendly face on a suburban street. Now the honesty, because this theory needs it badly, maybe more than any other covered so far. This is a fan theory, and a loose, playful one at that. The creators never said Quagmire is a supernatural creature. There is no episode revealing him as a demon. There is no confirmation, no buried script like there was with Stewie, no on-the-record creator comment treating him as anything other than a human character. Unlike Stewie, where the digging hit real buried treasure, the digging into Quagmire hits only fan invention. The supernatural reading is a story viewers built on top of a character who was designed, plainly and simply, as a comedy exaggeration. And the real explanation for everything the theory points to is, once again, sitting right there in the open. Quagmire's impossible success with women is not a clue about a hidden monster. It is a joke. The whole character is a deliberate cartoon exaggeration of a certain type of person, pushed past the point of realism on purpose, because exaggeration is where the comedy lives. The show does not present his success as realistic because it is not trying to be realistic. It is taking a single trait, the obsessive chasing, and cranking it up to an absurd, impossible level so that it becomes funny through sheer extremity. A character who succeeds at an impossible rate is funnier than one who fails like a real person would. The impossibility is the gag, not a mystery to be solved. The dark murder scene has a plain explanation too, and it is the same explanation that has come up again and again across these theories. The show reaches for shocking, pitch-black turns constantly, with all sorts of characters, because shock is one of its favorite tools. Having Quagmire calmly murder an entire family in a crossover is exactly the kind of cruel, over-the-top, taboo-smashing joke the show loves to drop, partly to be outrageous, and partly to take a swing at the wholesome cartoon family it is crossing over with. The coldness that fans read as proof of an inhuman monster is really just the show being as savage and boundary-pushing as it can be for a dark laugh. The scene was built to shock, not to reveal a hidden truth about Quagmire's species. Reading it as evidence of a demon is reading a joke as a clue, the same mistake fans made with the cutaways and the dirty lake. So why does a theory this thin still spread and stick around? The answer connects right back to the pattern that has run underneath every mystery in this whole story. Quagmire's success is so impossible, so far beyond what reality allows, that some part of the audience cannot accept it as just a joke. They need it to mean something inside the world of the show. A man should not be able to do what Quagmire does. So rather than shrug and accept that the show simply does not care about realism, fans build an in-world explanation for the impossibility. They reach for the supernatural, because the natural cannot account for what they are seeing. It is the exact same impulse that turned a polluted lake into poisoned mines, and a punching bag daughter into a secret outsider. The refusal to let an absurd thing just be absurd. The hunger for a hidden reason behind something that only exists because a writer thought it would be funny. There is a deeper reason this particular theory appeals to people, and it is worth naming because it reveals something about how we watch characters like Quagmire. The supernatural reading does something sneaky and a little comforting. By turning Quagmire into a monster, a creature with unnatural powers, it actually makes him less disturbing to think about. A man who treats women the way Quagmire does, who lies and schemes and uses people and shows flashes of genuine coldness, is unsettling precisely because he is supposed to be a regular guy living next door. Calling him a demon files him away under fantasy, where he is safely impossible, instead of under reality, where his behavior would be genuinely troubling. So the monster theory, oddly, lets the audience enjoy the character without sitting with the darker truth that he is meant to be human. It is easier to laugh at a demon than at a man who does demonic things. The theory provides a kind of escape hatch from the discomfort the character would otherwise cause. That is a subtle thing the show itself sometimes plays with, because over the years, the writers have actually leaned into the darker, more troubling side of Quagmire on purpose. There is a well-known episode where Quagmire delivers a long, furious speech tearing into the family dog Brian, exposing him as a phony and a creep. In that moment, the show seems aware that Quagmire, for all his cartoon silliness, can be used as a character who sees clearly and speaks hard truths. The writers know he is more than a one-note joke. They have used him as both a punchline and, occasionally, as a surprisingly sharp and even sympathetic figure. That flexibility, that willingness to let Quagmire be genuinely dark one minute and genuinely human the next, is part of why fans cannot quite settle on what he is. The show keeps shifting him around, and a character who keeps shifting invites theories about what he really is underneath. This case also makes a clean pair with the Stewie case in a way that teaches the whole lesson of these single-character mysteries. Both theories ask the same kind of question. Who is this character really? Underneath the surface, the show presents. With Stewie, the answer turned out to be real, confirmed, buried on purpose by the creators. With Quagmire, the answer turns out to be pure fan invention, with nothing behind it. Same kind of question, opposite kind of answer. And the only way to tell the difference between a theory that hit real treasure and a theory that hit empty air is to check it against what the creators actually said and did. Stewie had a shelved script and an on-the-record creator. Quagmire has a joke pushed to an absurd extreme, and a fan base that could not leave the absurdity alone. The feeling of mystery is identical in both cases. The truth underneath is completely different. That is the whole danger and the whole fun of fan theories sitting side by side. They look the same from the outside, and only the evidence tells you which one is hollow. So the Quagmire theory ends where most of these theories end, as a clever, entertaining story that fans built to explain something the show never meant to be explained. The impossible success is real, in the sense that the show really does present it. The dark murder scene is real, exactly as described. The flashes of genuine coldness are real. Every brick is something the show actually put on screen. But the monster assembled from those bricks lives only in the minds of the fans, a supernatural creature invented to make sense of a character who only ever needed one explanation. He is a joke turned up too loud, and the audience, unable to accept a joke that loud, decided he must be something more. And that brings the whole inward-facing batch of theories to a close with a clear shape. The town being an afterlife, invented. The water poisoning everyone's minds, invented. Meg being a secret outsider, invented, though the cruelty was real. Stewie's hidden identity, confirmed and real, the rare exception. Quagmire being a demon, invented. 5 times fans looked inside the show for a secret, and 4 times the secret turned out to be a story they told themselves, with only one striking case where the digging hit something the creators had truly buried. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The theories so far have all stayed inside one world, the world of the Griffins and their town. But the wildest branch of Family Guy fan thinking refuses to stay inside that one world at all. It looks across at the other shows the same creator made, other towns, other families, other talking animals, and strange children living their own lives on their own channels, and it asks a question that ties everything together into something much bigger than one cartoon. What if all of these separate shows shows are secretly happening in the same place, connected, part of one giant hidden world? And what if certain characters who seem like strangers across different shows are actually, secretly, family? Section 10. One giant hidden world. Every theory up to now has stayed locked inside a single world. The world of the Griffins and their little seaside town. The afterlife, the poisoned water, the secret about Meg, the truth about Stewie, the monster next door, all of it lived inside that one show, inside those few square miles of cartoon coastline. The wildest branch of Family Guy fan thinking refuses to stay there. It throws the doors open and looks at the other shows the same creator built. Other towns, other families, other talking animals, and strange children living their own lives on their own channels. And it asks a question that swallows everything that came before. What if none of these shows are separate at all? What if they are all secretly happening in the same place, threaded together into one enormous hidden world? And what if some characters who look like total strangers across these different shows are actually, secretly, family? To follow this theory, you first need to know that the man who created Family Guy did not stop at one show. He went on to make others in the same general style, also animated, also built around a family, also full of his particular brand of comedy. The two that matter most for this theory are a show about a neighbor of the Griffins who eventually got his own series in his own town, and a show about a very different family in a very different town, led by a man who works in a strange and secretive job. These shows have their own cast, their own settings, their own running jokes. On the surface, they are three completely separate worlds with nothing to do with each other beyond sharing a creator and a sense of humor. The shared universe theory says that surface is a lie. It says these worlds are connected, that they sit inside one single reality, and that the walls between them are far thinner than they appear. And the reason fans feel bold enough to claim this, the reason this theory is stronger than a pure guess, is that the shows themselves have crossed over in real, on-screen ways. This is where the theory stops being pure imagination and grabs onto something genuinely true. The clearest fact fans point to is that the neighbor from Family Guy, a major character on that show for years, literally left and got his own series. The show wrote him out by having him and his family move away to another town, and then a whole separate program followed him into that new life. So right there, baked into the real history of these shows, is a hard connection. A character from one world walked directly into another world and kept living. That is not a fan dream. That actually happened, on purpose, as an official part of how these shows were made. One world's resident became another world's star, which means at minimum those two worlds touch. A person cannot move from one place to another unless both places exist in the same reality. The crossover is real and undeniable. On top of that, the shows have had actual crossover moments where characters from one appear in another, where the towns get referenced across shows, where the creator's whole collection of programs nods at each other and acknowledges that they share a world. The connections are not constant and they are not always serious, but they are real and they are on the record. The creator built a set of shows that wink at one another, that occasionally let their characters meet, that treat each other as parts of a loosely shared reality rather than sealed off separate boxes. So the basic claim of the theory, that these worlds are connected, rests on a genuinely solid foundation. The shows themselves established it. That solid foundation is exactly what makes the theory dangerous, because fans took the real connection and built towering, unprovable guesses on top of it. The boldest guess, the one that gets repeated most, is about a single character. There is a child on that other show, the one about the family with the father in the secretive job, a strange and memorable kid who is one of that show's standout characters. A theory that spread widely among fans claims that this kid is secretly one of the Griffin family's long-lost children. The idea is that somewhere in the messy, bendy history of the Griffins, a child was lost or given up or otherwise sent away, and that this child grew up to become a character on a completely different show, in a completely different town, without anyone in either show ever realizing the connection. Two strangers on two separate programs, secretly brother and sister, or secretly tied by blood, separated across the hidden borders of one giant shared world. It is a delicious idea for a fan, because it takes the real, confirmed fact that these worlds connect, and pushes it into something enormous and emotional. If the worlds are truly one, then characters who never meet might still be related. Families might be split across shows. The whole collection of programs might be one vast, tangled family tree, with secret cousins and lost siblings scattered across different towns and different channels, none of them aware of each other. The theory turns a handful of separate cartoons into a single sprawling saga, and that scale is intoxicating. It makes every show feel like a piece of something much bigger than itself. Fans push this even further, into other characters too. There is a long-running guess that a certain elderly, fabulously rich and wicked old man from that most famous rival cartoon family, the one the Griffins are always compared to, is secretly the grown-up future version of the baby, Stewie. The reasoning leans on surface resemblances, a certain way of speaking, a certain villainous flair, a certain shape to the personality, and fans connected those dots into a claim that the evil baby of one show becomes the evil old man of another, aged decades and dropped into a different town. It is the same move as the lost child theory. Take two characters from two separate worlds, notice something they share, and declare a secret hidden link binding the shows together into into one reality. Now the honesty, and this case needs a careful, two-handed honesty more than almost any other, because it is a genuine mix of solid truth and pure invention, and telling them apart is the entire point. On one hand, the real, confirmed part is unusually strong. These shows truly are connected. The Neighbor truly did move from one to another and get his own series. The shows truly have crossed over and referenced each other and behaved like parts of a shared world. So unlike the Demon Quagmire theory, which had nothing official behind it at all, the shared universe idea has a real backbone. The basic claim that the worlds touch is true and documented. Anyone who says these shows have nothing to do with each other is simply wrong, because the history of the shows proves otherwise. On the other hand, every specific dramatic guess built on top of that backbone is invention. The lost child theory, the idea that a kid on one show is secretly a griffin, was never confirmed by anyone who makes the shows. There is no episode revealing it, no creator statement establishing it, no buried script like the one that existed for Stewie. It is a fan story, and notably it traces back to a single online claim that spread because it was fun, not because it was true. The grown-up Stewie theory is the same. A fan connecting surface details across two shows with nothing official to back the link. So the theory splits cleanly down the middle. The connection between the worlds is real. The specific secret family ties supposedly hiding inside that connection are made up. And here the plain truth is more interesting than usual, because the real reason these worlds connect is not a grand hidden plan. It is simply how the creator likes to work. He built several shows in the same style, voiced characters across them, and enjoyed letting his creations nod at each other and occasionally meet, the way an artist might sign all his paintings the same way or hide the same small detail in each one. The crossovers and references are real, but they are playful flourishes, the creator having fun across his own body of work, not the careful construction of a single epic saga with secret bloodlines running through it. The Neighbor moved to his own show because the show's makers wanted to give a popular character his own series, a normal business and creative decision, not a clue drop to reveal a hidden universe. Fans took a creator's habit of connecting his work and inflated it into a theory of one vast secret reality full of lost relatives. This reveals the biggest, boldest form of the exact hunger that has driven every single theory in this whole story. Trace it back through everything. Fans wanted the show to secretly know the future. They wanted the town to secretly be the afterlife. They wanted the water to secretly explain the jokes. They wanted Meg to secretly be an outsider. They wanted Quagmire to secretly be a monster. Each of those took something in front of the audience and insisted there was a bigger, deeper, hidden thing behind it. The shared universe theory is that same hunger grown to its largest possible size. It is no longer satisfied with a hidden secret inside one show. It wants every show to be secretly one show, every separate world to be secretly connected, every stranger to be secretly family. It is the hunger for hidden meaning expanded until it tries to swallow the creator's entire collection of work and bind it into a single grand design. There is a reason this particular hunger feels so good to indulge, and it is worth understanding because it explains why the shared universe theory may be the most beloved of all of them. A connected universe makes everything feel more important. If these shows are all separate, then each one is just a comedy, here to make you laugh and then end. But if they are all secretly one world, then suddenly there are stakes that stretch beyond any single episode. A joke on one show might secretly matter to a character on another. A throwaway line might secretly be a clue. The whole sprawling mess of cartoons becomes a puzzle with a hidden picture, and the viewer who spots the connections gets to feel like a detective who has seen something most people miss. The theory rewards attention. It turns casual watching into treasure hunting, and nothing keeps a fan base devoted like the belief that there is hidden treasure waiting for anyone clever enough to look. The truth that the connections are real but the grand saga is imagined sits in that careful middle once again, the same middle the Stewie case lived in. Yes, the world's touch. No, there is no confirmed secret family tree linking strangers across shows. Both halves are true at the same time, and holding both at once is the only honest way to talk about this theory. Dismiss it entirely and you ignore the real, documented crossovers. Believe it entirely and you swallow fan inventions as fact. The accurate view keeps one foot in each, accepting the genuine connections while setting aside the unconfirmed secret bloodlines as the fun fiction they are. This case also closes a loop that has been running since the very first section, and the symmetry is worth noticing. The story began with theories that looked outward, at the real world, asking whether the show could see beyond its own screen into our reality. Then it turned inward, asking what secrets hid inside the show's own world. And now, at the largest scale, it turns sideways, asking whether the show's world connects to other fictional worlds built by the same hands. Outward to reality, inward to itself, sideways to its siblings. The hunger for hidden meaning pointed in every possible direction, one after another, never satisfied with the surface in any of them. The same need that made fans stitch a fake bombing clip made them dream of lost children scattered across cartoons. Different size, different target, identical hunger underneath. And in nearly every direction that hunger pointed, the same lesson waited at the end. The thing fans noticed was usually real. The fake clip was real, the polluted lake was real, the cruelty to Meg was real, the hints about Stewie were real, the crossovers between shows were real. But the the grand hidden meaning fans built on top of those real things was, again and again, something they invented, with the rare striking exception of Stewie, where the creators had truly buried a real secret. The pattern is almost perfectly consistent. Real evidence, invented meaning, plain truth waiting underneath for anyone willing to choose it over the magic. So the shared universe theory ends as the grandest and most revealing of them all. Its foundation is the most solid of any theory covered, because the worlds genuinely are connected in documented, on-screen ways. And its tower is the tallest stack of pure invention, because the secret families and grown-up villains it imagines have nothing official holding them up. It is the whole story of Family Guy fan theories compressed into one idea. A real connection, a wild dream built on top, and a fan base that loved the dream too much to ask whether the foundation could actually hold it. The shape these 10 cases make is almost too clean to ignore. Nearly every theory turned out to be a real thing wrapped around an invented meaning. The fake bombing clip was real, the polluted lake was real, the cruelty to Meg was real, the hints about Stewie were real, the crossovers between shows were real, and on top of each one, fans built a secret the show never held, with only the buried Stewie episode standing as the rare time the digging struck real treasure. The lesson is not really about a cartoon. It is about us. We watch a goofy show throw 10,000 random jokes at the wall for decades, and some part of us cannot accept that the strange and the sad and the coincidental might just be strange and sad and coincidental, with nobody behind the curtain. So we build the meaning ourselves, because a world full of secrets is easier to love than one that is only ever exactly what it looks like.
If you enjoyed this video essay, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.